T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Launch Sequence podcast. We're back for another week of chatting about space games. Of course, Star Citizen mostly today. But I am joined by fellow Inforunner and good friend, Execute. Thank you for coming on the show today with me. We're going to talk some spaceship stuff, specifically the Polaris. How you doing, dude?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So before we get into this one today, I do want to say that there was supposed to be an episode about kind of Star Citizen 1.0. That talk will happen at some point. But OBS being OBS, technology being technology, the recording unfortunately did not work. So what we do have from that, which is just audio only, will be released as a bonus episode on the Launch Sequence on any audio platforms. If you want to check that out, it will be missing the end of the episode, but it's a really good talk with Zero State about kind of the direction of Star Citizen and how it can become an MMO. We will still get Zero State on at some point to talk more about Star Citizen, but for today, I'm with Shipman.
Am I the Wish version of Zero State? Okay, good to know. Right, yeah.
Well, you come with the Polaris, so I feel like people are going to be more excited about that.
All right.
We're doing whenever it ships. Honestly, I was gonna, bring you on for Invictus as we do. But since the Polaris video, or not the Polaris video, since the Invictus video came out and had the Polaris, and we even just did a talk about that on Inforunners, I felt like it was still a good time this week to have a talk about probably one of the most anticipated ships in Star Citizen, right? Would you say?
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I think the only other one I can really think of would be the Banner Man. If I really kind of sat here and kind of analyzed it, it would be way up there. The Carrack was probably in front of the Polaris too, but that's already out now,
Yeah, the Carrack the Carrack release was a fun one to watch because of how we went from incredibly excited and super just dumbfounded with it in like ISC, or I think it might have been around the verse back then, and then it came out and everybody was like, this is a little bit different.
Yeah, well again, you're buying these spaceships that are essentially on paper, or as they call it, a JPEG, and your perception of them can, let's be honest, I don't think you can ever take a concept and it fully meets your perception. Plus, you add the fact that things change along the way.
Yeah.
But I think no one would say that it's fully, that they exactly as how they thought it would be, and it's CIG's fault that they didn't make it exactly like you thought it was going to be, because your experiences sum up what you think it's going to be. So yeah, I don't know.
You gearing everybody up for the Endeavor release with that kind of statement?
Jeez, man. Every time I get a question in like one of the, how they do the 10 questions or whatever, the Q&As, and I get it through the John Crew, and John Crew's just eye rolling at me. But yeah, you can understand why though. But yeah, I think that ship is going to be like most ships. I think Agrid kind of said it best, like when he said earlier today, like I enjoy every ship that comes along, like they've all got a really cool place. And I think that's one of the things about the game. Like we all share that passion, even if you don't own a ship. It's just a cool right, cool. That's another kind of like what do you call it? A thing in the tool belt type of thing, like another ship that I can use, another ship I can earn in game. Might not be for me because I'm into X and this is Y, but I don't know. I love seeing the different things come along in the styles, and I think we are spoiled when it comes to manufacturers. For an example, what game do you know that has multiple manufacturers that have multiple stylings each? Like that, that is the closest thing we've ever got to the real world. And I just can't believe it hasn't been a thing up until now.
Took a lot of money.
Well, generally, most movies, they basically make an alien race, and all the foot soldiers have helmets on, so they don't have to put their facial makeup all on, and then the one big bad guy is the only one with any makeup, and they all look the same. The ships all look the same. They're all very flat. They don't have any personality or development because it comes down to money and time, which they're poor on. again, having 10 years has actually probably helped them in that regard, right? We've got more and more lore and more depth because they've had the time to do so.
Yeah,
And I think it adds to the shit. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think also the collective world seems to have figured out just in the last decade or two how much money there is in video game stuff. And now they're kind of, you can see the frenzy starting to grow. And the biggest evidence of that seems to be the TV shows and movies that do well. I think Fallout is going to be the sign to a lot more studios and live action projects that like, hey, this is good stuff. People like this.
If you do
but
it
then
right.
There's also Halo.
well, yeah, that's a really good example. Like, let's just pull that apart for a minute. First season was kind of crap. They learned in the second season and improved, but I think they've got a long way to go. But they are making improvements, and that's the main thing. And I think the other part of it is if you actually have a director that's super passionate and actually understands what he's working with. The guy that did Fallout, I don't remember his name, but I remember watching a behind the scene thing, and he was talking about how he'd played all the games. The main character, she went out and played all the games. Like that, just most actors wouldn't give two shits, and a lot of directors they go, it's my vision, and I go, but it's not your vision. It's the creator that created its vision, and you've got to follow that vision. So
well, I think you could definitely create a new story in the same universe for sure. Like,
yes. But I mean that baseline.
Yeah, I think that Fallout does a good job because it goes I haven't watched it yet, so I don't actually know everything about it, but it seems like it's following a different story in that fiction.
It follows the world of the games that was pretty like it changes a few things because it's TV, but you got to do that in some regards, right? But it follows it fairly heavily. And I think that's why they did so well. And it's got the same quirkiness that Fallout's got, like, just things that are a little weird, like the vaults and stuff like that. And it kind of does this kind of the cool thing about it, not to spoil anything, it's a little tiny spoiler, but it's like they show stuff from before they go into the vaults and stuff, and it's kind of this got a cool backstory element to it.
See,
and yeah.
I keep saying, why didn't Halo just do Contact Harvest? Who in their right mind didn't think that the discovery of a heretical, antagonistic, aggressive cult of aliens from different planets found humanity and decided to destroy them, and it was just like this one dude playing this little action stealth sort of suspense thriller as an alien species took over his planet. It's such a good idea for a freaking show. And they instead they were like, you know what? It's the Chief, Master Chief guy, Halo guy.
You can kind of bring this back to Star Citizen a bit as well. Can you imagine what would happen if we didn't have Chris having his cohesive vision? That whole too many chefs. Like we've seen that as well, where you bring in so many writers and directors and stuff, and instead of it's just one person kind of leading the charge, it just becomes I want this, and so nobody gets what they want. I don't know. I can sit here and talk about what went wrong on certain things and what went right, but I think it's just following what was there, and then and adding to it, not destroying or changing, but just adding to that world. And I think that's what they did so well in Fallout. They took that world as a baseline and then made their own story. Where I think the big one with Halo is taking the helmet off. Believe it or not, I think that actually kind of ruined that character. They should have left him a little bit more like Mando, you know what I mean? Where he very rarely took it off in extreme circumstances. But yeah, that's just me. This is not a Polaris talk, by the way.
No. I was actually going to say, before we get to the Polaris today, we are going to talk about Star Citizen. But this is a topic that I kind of wanted to pick your brain on because you've been covering and following Star Citizen for quite a long time. There have been some key changes in development communication around Star Citizen. I won't say like it is a different game they're making or anything like that. But there have been some shifts at the top a little bit. I think the biggest one is Todd Pappy and Richard Tyre.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's definitely things going on in the way that the game is developed. They're finishing up the engine, they're finishing up the foundation, they're starting to add and build out the game itself more. But do you feel like all of this is signifying something major in the development or the direction of Star Citizen? Do you think that anything, you talked about Chris's vision, do you think that changes? Or do you think Chris still has as much sway on what things happening now than is 4 or 5 years ago?
I think he's definitely had to bring more people in as time's gone by and make changes. I think that it's like anything. You like we're saying, the concept of ships. It's the same thing. You have an idea of where you want the game to go, but it's not always going to work. So you got to change. Look at what happened with server meshing and iCache and half the features they've done and they've had to redo. Nothing ever. What is it? Best laid plans. That's essentially what I'm trying to say.
So
right?
Do you think that there have been some significant shifts in the direction then to account for that, or?
Yeah, and again, like any company or business, whether you're talking about a supermarket or a mum and dad shop to right up to a massive corporation, people have lives. Things change. They move countries. So people moving in and out is just that's normal, right? Happened all the time when I was doing it in games development, and I'm sure it's happened in someone's going to move school, even if you're in school and you're a kid and you don't understand the work environment. It's the same thing there. It's just people move around, so that's a given. But as for the actual letting other people in, like look at Richard Tyra. He works hand in hand now with Chris. There's just one person I can pick and say there's someone that's had a really big influence on the game. They've got heads of different parts of the studio and stuff like that. He's learned to trust his team,
and because I think he joined in like 2019. How do you think that affects everything, since he's maybe not like the old guard, as you might call it? Wasn't there in the beginning. Do you think he has a different view? Do you think he got on board with what the view was, or is he having an effect on the development?
It can go multiple ways. It can be like he just proved himself. He had some really good ideas. He could be totally on board with the vision. Like it can be a bit of everything, just like anything in any company, man. We will probably find out about that stuff over time. And I would almost say I'm pretty sure there's people that have left because they didn't agree with the vision. I'd go the other way as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just human nature, man. Really, at the end of the day.
I'm looking forward to seeing how Squadron turns out. It's the way that they're shifting people around from Squadron to Star Citizen, and us understanding how much of that development is coming into Star Citizen. I'm excited to get that and maybe get a preview of what Star Citizen might look like. All right, man. Thanks for your thoughts on that. I don't know. Things happen in companies all the time, and people always talk about how the person who's best for a company from 1 to 1,000 employees might not be best from 1,000 to 10,000 and all that kind of stuff. And like you said, 10 years, 12 years of doing this, there aren't very many examples to understand how a game itself could or even needs to change to keep up with the industry.
I can think of another one. They started out with Sandy in the marketing, and then they moved to bigger marketing people. Because as the thing grew, and I think there's good and bad things to that. Like Sandy was really personal in her marketing approach and really understood the community. And then I remember I don't remember exactly the first one, but one of the people they brought in was from EA, and it was just like no. Like it's and they brought in all these different things, and it wasn't as good for the community. I remember there was a period there for about 4 years I didn't spend a dime, and I know I wasn't the only one. Like a lot of the veteran backers essentially closed their wallets, so they must have felt that at some point.
Well, you've talked at times about how it definitely feels like it's becoming more kind of big budget, big company feel, and less of that. And that was a while ago. I think you were saying that a few years back.
Yeah, since around about 2016, 2017, it's just felt smaller, bigger and bigger. And you would have kept track of, just like I as well, the number of counts and the number of people actively playing the game and stuff like that. We're definitely growing, and you kind of think of where we are now. What is it going to be like after release? Like it started out as a few fish in a small pond. Now I feel like I'm a few fish in a giant ocean type of thing. You know what I mean? So like, back when I started this, I remember there was essentially like 3 or 4 podcasts, and we were the biggest one. And I just remember one of the other guys I did the podcast with would go, do you know that they literally just talked about our podcast nonstop on their podcast? And it was the biggest form of flattery to me. Now, so many people don't even know who I am. Like, that's a complete reversal of what it was from then. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I'm just trying to give you an example. But
it's a big community. It
is a big community, and that's what I like about it. And there's just so many cool voices in it, and so many new people coming in. And well, that's how I found you, man. I was out looking for new blood, so to speak, at the time.
Yeah.
And
dude,
I can't imagine what it's going to be like when it releases. How many people come into this thing? You know,
I remember when I was starting out, because Execute, for anybody who's watching this, one of the first people from the Star Citizen community to reach out and like actually talk with me. And I remember at the time we were talking, and you were telling me about like Paul and his podcast and everything, but it was a different time back then. Even then, that was like what, 2020 maybe, and it has grown leaps and freaking bounds since then, to the point where there are entire wings of the community who don't even look at Spectrum or Inside Star Citizen or any of that stuff. They're just playing the game casually. And it's funny when people are like, oh, this isn't going to work. Squadron 42's already been sold to everybody who wants it. No freaking way. The community might feel big now, but like you said, after that comes out, that's a completely different market of people who can look at it.
Well, kind of similar thing to what I was saying about people are people type of thing back when we were talking the last thing, but it's the same thing again. Look at all the people that invested right at the beginning, right? You get these people that are kind of like the believers, the explorers. They're willing to put their money where their mouth is, right up until those people that can call it a scam to day one till it releases on a shelf. You get a whole gamut of people within there. As it develops, people jump in on it all the different spots. It's the same thing again. You'll jump in where you feel safe. You may never jump in because this might not be for the game for you. And by the same token, when it releases, there might be some people that hate it because it's all of a sudden not the game they thought it was, which goes way back to what we said about at the beginning. About the Polaris. Yeah.
At any point, this game can take a development change that on a scale of, I absolutely love this to death, and I hate this so much it'll make me quit the game. Every change they do is going to be on that scale. At some point, something might happen that makes you not want the game, and that's just the way it is. Like that happened. If there was ever a game that came out and you were excited for it, and then it came out and you saw the gameplay, you saw the graphics, you saw the design, and you were like, I was excited for this, but maybe I'll wait until it goes on sale or something like that. That's what's happening to us in real time. It's okay that they do something or add something to the game you don't like. No game you've ever gotten to play has been perfect. You have to take some concessions. Like, I'm hearing about how bedlogging is now going to lose its importance. That's a big one for me. That's like, that's a huge detail that I was actually quite a big fan of in this game, and I don't know how they're going to handle it now, but they're not removing bedlogging, just changing its significance is one of those things that for myself is like, okay, this affects how much I'm going to continue to follow the game. Not to say it's pushing me away or something, but however many times that happens is how long you wait until eventually you say this isn't the game for you. Nobody should be forcing themselves to be into Star Citizen because they bought a ship or because they hope that it'll be the perfect game. Just enjoy what's there, enjoy the direction it's going in, and if you don't, step back for a bit. It's been my TED Talk. Thank you.
How many people are going to play Squadron and not play Star Citizen at all?
Back in the day, that would have been me. I absolutely, if I didn't find Star Citizen, I would have played Squadron and never touched Star Citizen unless they got me with the marketing. Because some people just want to fly a spaceship. You don't need to have an MMO for that.
Well, how many people do we hear about where they go, I just want to be a solo person in the game and fly my Javelin with AI and stuff? Like,
Yeah. Well, Squadron might be for you. Speaking of flying ships with AI, though, that's going to be more of a capital ship sort of thing. And guess what our topic for today is? Capital ship. Yeah. The Polaris. It's shown up, and it's an Invictus Week trailer, and people are probably losing their minds about it to some extent. But many people might be wondering, especially if they're a little newer to the game, why the heck are people so obsessed with the Polaris?
To put my finger on it specifically is, I think it's a sum of its part problem. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a few things. I think it's the smallest capital ship. That's a part of it. I think it's RSI. I think that's a part of it. A torpedo bomber. One of the biggest ships we've ever had in the game. Oh God, there's a few things there. I don't know. I put that question back to you too, man. Why do you think it's so popular?
Dude, that was genuine. I don't know why. People are so excited for this ship. I think a big part of it is it looks cool. There aren't.
I was gonna say, it's like I said earlier though, but I'm interested in every ship, not just one or two. Like I like seeing them all come along. So I find it a bit weird when the question is, why is it so popular? Well, considering its price tag too, right? It's not like cha-ching, I'll just buy 5. Like it's a $750 US spaceship. Like it's.
Well, I'm not going to say it's popular because a lot of people have it. I think more people have it than probably statistically makes sense in human space because it's a warship, but it's
probably better value than some other ships though as well.
Like, this thing's loved like the Cutlass Black, man. One of the most versatile ships in the game, and this is a massive size 9 torpedo hauling gunboat corvette that most people will never need. So it's more conceptual. It feels like the interest in it than anything, concept and design.
I think it's hard to judge at the moment whether people won't need it or not, because the other thing is, like, you can also look at orgs too. Like, a lot of orgs going to kind of want one, and you and all your mates get on. I think the game is clearly pushing us to play with other people. That said, I don't think everyone needs a Polaris, obviously. But if you're playing with a bunch of friends, we'll put it this way: how many are there in the garden? Or I'm telling you, there's at least a dozen in the garden. Yeah, your org, yeah.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. There's something special about the ship. Now, supporters of Twitch and YouTube, Patreon, anybody who supports us is able to come and join these podcasts live. So we do have chat going on right now saying it could be the CCU chain. Is a really nice, and you are one of the people to talk to about that. Would you say that the Polaris comes up a lot in those CCU chains, makes it easy to upgrade to?
Yep. Absolutely. It's one of the better value ships around that price point. So you've got things like the A2, which is the complete opposite of the Polaris, like where it's worth that. And then things like and Hammerhead, and they're not as attractive around that price point. You can go for $25, you jump off 3 of those ships, and the Perseus is $75 more, but the ship doubles in size. So from a value perspective, you're getting a lot more ship. And so by being able to take that more expensive ship, you can earn down to other ships. So by, I don't know, it seems like better value on paper to me. But as you said, not everyone's going to want to use that big ship. You might just want to be that solo guy in a Polaris. It might not speak to, a prospector.
Yeah.
So I mix up ships that start with the same letter all the time. Algra does it as well, and we're always mixing up the Prospector, the Pioneer, and the Polaris and the Perseus.
Yeah,
they're too similar.
it's an Australian thing. It's because you guys are upside down, so you get a little bit confused with like gravity and stuff. At least that's what I've heard.
So it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 155 plus meters in length, because I think they said it grew. 216 SU of storage as of right now. 6 to 14 rated crew. Now, we're going to get back to that crew count because that's an interesting one. But this thing has torpedo bays, medical bay, hangar, a bridge, a mess hall. It's got a lot of stuff in it. And as you said, it's one of the smallest capital ships. If this was missing torpedoes, if it was just the ship it is without the combat functionality, do you think it would still be as popular? Or do you think a lot of that hinges on the power of it?
I think being a combat ship, it would have to have something else. Does it have a rail gun? Does it have, every combat ship has its kind of thing, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? So if you take it away from one area, you have to give it another. Because the other ship that I'll chuck out there, right, just to give you a kind of example on a similar line of thought, is the Odyssey, right? Is because the Odyssey and the Polaris are kind of similar in size. They both have that hangar, but one kind of leads into the planetary surveying and exploration, where the other goes into combat. But they both have really high amount of sensors on them. Right?
And what would you say is more popular?
The Polaris, because it's combat.
Okay, so you do think that a lot of it runs in line with that combat. Is that indicative of just how much of the early community? Because this is more of a early community favorite, right? At least from what I've seen.
Well, when it dropped, they literally said each torpedo costs the price of an Avenger.
An Avenger, yeah.
Yeah, and 28 of those torpedoes, and you could essentially. We don't know what the damage numbers are going to be, right? But obviously in the video they showed what they fired 2 and it took out an Idris. Like that's
marketing,
just bananas.
Marketing.
Yeah, it's marketing. we won't know. They'll change the numbers. They'll balance it, right? I'm not worried about that. But the question always comes down to, man, it's going to cost so much money to buy torpedoes for that. But like, think of the cost if you don't. You lose the entire ship. You've got to wait for it to respawn, all the components, blah blah blah. You get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And Avengers. Kind of cheap if you think about it. If you've got to fire a couple of those to get 2 Avengers to get rid of an Idris, like you do the math. That sounds like a bargain to me.
Well, you are going off a statement they made during the reveal of this ship, which is what 2015, 2016 is like a 8-year-old concept. Do you remember how they introduced it?
It was at I believe it was the AIE or CitizenCon. I have to go back and actually look, but it was at the end of the year there. I was just going to say, I did quickly think of another reason why it is probably popular, is because it punches up. Smallest capital, but it punches up to other capitals. A little bit like the Redeemer. The Redeemer punches up? Yeah.
Punches up right at Paul.
Yep.
Uppercuts him because he makes so many bad statements about it. Yeah. No, it was smack dab right in the middle of a CitizenCon. Oh my gosh, folks, if you find the marketing for Star Citizen a little bit right now, there was no shame. I feel like that was a no shame kind of plug. That was literally in the middle of CitizenCon. They started playing a Squadron 42 video, like they were showing like the destroyed city of Vega, and then this voiceover came on and was like, "Are you looking to protect humanity with us?" And you're like, okay, cool. They're going to do some kind of event. This is pretty sick. And then they bring out the render of a ship and they're like, buy this ship to help protect the boundaries. And you're like, wait, what? Yeah. Imagine if they were like, buy this ship to receive in 2024 to protect humanity. And you're like, dude, like that was not a good introduction.
You're sitting there in 2012 and they promise that they'll only ever sell this ship for one day. And you melt all your ships and buy a Banner Merchantman, and I'm still waiting.
What's more exciting, the Banner Merchantman or the Polaris?
I think, again, for me personally, I like them both. I'm going to sound like a broken record here. I like them for different reasons, though. Like you've got a sleek combat ship versus a highly elegant shop ship and cargo transport. Like I'll probably use the cargo ship more, probably, but I don't look at them like that. I'm really weird in that regard. Like I don't have a favorite manufacturer, so to speak. Like, and though on paper the Reclaimer is my favorite ship, there are a lot of ships directly right behind it that I really like as well. So,
just not I'm more excited for either one.
I'm a bit ambivalent. So I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question, but
it's an answer.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the role of the Polaris and what it does as a ship. I named some of the stuff it has there. I think the medical bay is actually a pretty valuable one. This almost sounds like it could be maybe an org base. Do you think that this could handle everything that an org needs to just kind of fly around and do stuff that's maybe not combat related?
I actually think it points a little bit. If you look at the rooms and stuff, it points a little bit towards bounty hunting, believe it or not, because it does have a brig as well. So the docking ports are actually for smaller ships. They're not. Actually, the one in the video was capital. but the original ones on the design dock were just standard docking ports. So you get to see something like an Avenger docking with us and dropping off prisoners or whatever like that. And yeah, again, it would allow them to land in the cargo bay and drop them off as, not the cargo bay, sorry, the hangar, and drop them off and things like that as well. I think the only thing it's really kind of, and I don't think it's missing, it just doesn't have, is repair facilities. But again, being a combat ship, you can also repair ships that land inside it. So this is the type of ship, if you remember the concept, I'm sure you've been through it with a fine-tooth comb, was they called it the tip of the spear. That's what they kind of listed as that. And you kind of think about what that is. If it's got really good sensors, it's finding what it's going to strike. And just like a spear, you go in just with the tip and then back out again. This thing is not meant to hang around and fight. It's going to go in, hit its target, where it's a base or a ship or whatever, do the damage, and it's out. If this thing hang around, it's like again, it's, as I said, it's punching up, but that's how it's punching up. It's just coming in, slapping you in the face, and running away.
Yeah,
you know,
this thing was made to be a faster, more readily available version of the Idris, right? A smaller, more readily deployable version of the Idris. Funny enough, this ship was technically did not exist during Squadron 42, right? The game, it's after Squadron 42.
Yeah, they upsized it from a corvette to a frigate, the Idris, and so we've seen this with a few other ships too. That the Banner Matchman's got the Raelian as an example. You know, they've upgraded the Idris, and a lot of people got a free bump to that because I think it was around about $1,000, and now it's like $1,400 or whatever. And so they got a free upgrade. But yeah, the Polaris was clearly a response to a ship that was a gap in the lineup. And it was the only Corvette for it. Until the Odyssey came along, it was the only Corvette. But we know there are more coming as well, so yeah.
Do you think that it'll be soloable?
I think any ship is technically soloable, but you will struggle like crazy. It's kind of like, do you remember when the Mole came out and there were people solo mining in it? You can technically do it, but should you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, if you're in a high security space where, you know, they turn up to save you, yeah, you can struggle through and do it solo if you want, and also get some AI to help you as well. But it's not going to be fun, you know.
Yeah.
But you'll make enough money that you can get a smaller ship to operate on your own.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, someone trying to do a javelin on their own, I can't imagine that will be a thing that you keep up very long.
In 323, they are emphasizing the flight modes and operator modes a lot more. And I think that these capital ships will be a very apparent place where that happens, where the person who's flying probably won't have access to the torpedoes. I wouldn't expect it, you know, that might be the case, but I feel like when it comes to large ships and current military situations or in other fictions, the people who are flying generally aren't the people who are firing the guns.
Yep. Agreed.
So maybe you can use this ship, but you might have to go park it out in space, run over to the other seat, enter your torpedo system, and then hope somebody flies in front of you or something. And that might be where those complications of soloing a ship like this come from, mainly. Yeah.
So you might not be using the torpedoes, but you could put blades on it to fire the turrets, or you could put AI on the torpedoes to fire them for you, or in the turrets, etc.
And you can also fill it with cargo, put a ship in the hangar. You can do all that stuff and probably take off, fly somewhere else, land, and take that stuff out. But then why not do that with a more purpose-based ship that doesn't cost a ton of money for military components and all that stuff?
Yeah. Other than necessity, there's no other reason. So if the Polaris is your biggest ship and you kind of want to earn down or something like that on release, I can see that. But yeah, again, I just keep coming back to the whole game is really you can clearly tell it's trying to push you to work together with other people, because even if you look at a game like WoW, right? As that went up, you went from kind of like leveling on your own to doing, you know, the 5-player dungeons to the 10 to 25-player raids. And everyone will tell you, the more people you play with, there are more moving parts, there are more having to work together. But how much more satisfying was it? The higher you went, the more satisfying it became.
Yeah.
Because it was harder to pull off. It was kind of like that when you succeeded, it was like that was the hardest thing, but it was so rewarding because it was hard.
not necessarily the end game content, but definitely the more complex, you need to understand the game a little bit better content. Would you, we don't know anything about this. This is like almost purely speculation based question. It's probably something we're going to learn more of by the end of the year, but would you assume that the question just escaped my mind? Oh man, I had it.
It's had an Inforunners moment. That's what we call that, where we go off tangent so much that we forgot what we were talking about.
Too much Star Citizen in the head. I was going to ask, do you think that the gameplay people would experience on the Polaris is something that, let's say a new player really wants to get into capital ship gameplay? Is that something they would have to wait a long time to play, or do you think that CIG is going to make it easy to get into the infrastructure behind making it possible to play on a Polaris seems like it would need to be deep. Looking for group channels, the ability to put out a public hiring board on a space station to hire people. All of that kind of stuff feels like if somebody wanted to jump into Star Citizen and play in a Polaris, they'd have to wait weeks to meet people, right? Do you think that this is going to be attainable?
They've talked about that. They want to do all those things. But at the moment, right now, I think you're probably going in, so when the Polaris drops, it'll probably be playing in an org. Orgs will go in and organize to jump into a Polaris together, just like they do with the smaller ships like the Hammerhead and the Carrack and things like that.
Right.
You know, and I think when we do see this come in, you're probably going to see the Polaris and Aegis going toe to toe.
In that case, do you think that part of... I have always been of the idea that they wouldn't release the Polaris at Invictus, not because they wouldn't finish the ship art-wise, but because the gameplay isn't there. Do you think that they are hoping to release org tools or better gameplay situated for large ship by the time the Polaris is in game, or do you think that they're probably just going to release it into the game and say, keep playing, good luck?
I think it's simpler than that, actually. I think it's server meshing. And were you around when the Reclaimer dropped?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember? So what happens when a new ship drops? Any ship, what happens? The first day it drops out and it goes to live, what happens?
It's very popular.
Yep. So can you imagine what's going to happen with the Polaris when it drops?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is like, what do you think happens when we have 18 Polaris filling up a server?
Servers were crashing like crazy when the Reclaimer came out. It was just insane because everyone wanted to be on their Reclaimer and they wanted to fly their Reclaimer around, and they were everywhere. Right. And once the server got to about 15, as soon as 16 spawned, boom, the whole thing crashed.
Right.
And think about what we've got now. We've got more higher player count than we had before. It ain't coming until we got server meshing. There's just no way. It can't hold. Like, this is a ship bigger than that.
So you think it's going to be less gameplay and more tech related? Like, you think if server meshing is here, but the org stuff to support it, the missions for capital ships wasn't, they'd still drop it?
Let's break it down, right? Is not, and I'll put this in the simplest way I can say it, is not the Retaliator a smaller version of the Polaris?
I guess, yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, in its role,
So it doesn't have all the gameplay, but it's got gameplay.
It can fire torpedoes.
Yep.
We've got
and
that.
It can fire
but like,
guns.
imagine this amazing ship, and they're like, oh, you need 6 to 14 crew, and it's going to take forever. And then they drop it in, and you got like 2 people running around.
Well, let's look at all the gameplay that would have to be there for everything. You don't have medical full facilities. You don't have the repair functionality in the hangar. You don't have the rearming in the hangar, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on.
Well,
you don't have bounty hunting for the brig stuff. You don't have as you said, the engineering. You don't have the engine stuff. You don't have full engineering. Like there's a lot of gameplay in there. So if it's coming this year, we ain't going to have all of that. So it's not coming with all of its gameplay.
But what could be this year? That's what I'm looking at. Are they waiting for engineering? Are they waiting to possibly have an org system or a comm system that's better suited for capital ships? Or are they just going to ignore that?
I definitely think that they'd be building engineering into it. But we know the test bed for engineering started with the A2, right?
Yep.
So, and they're adding more ships all the time into that. So I think they added 3 just the other day. So we went from the Gladius and the A2 to, I think they added, one of them was the Avenger. I can't quite remember the 3, but they added 3 new ones.
10 ships now. on the resource network.
Yeah. So, the big thing I always hear about server meshing that's always left out is object and container streaming, right? That ability they actually talked about it way back when. You said you could literally have 100 people in each room right next to each other, because each server could go right, because again, that's what that object container stream is being able to scale the size dynamically of the servers to fit the number of players in any given area. So if you wanted to be crazy enough to put 200 people on a Javelin, you could, but obviously now we've got restrictions like life support that would bring that time down significantly.
Yeah.
But it is theoretically possible.
There are a lot of possibilities that could dictate the Polaris release date, but I think the best, I feel like it's almost dumb to not assume it's coming with 4.0.
Agreed. But again, that's server meshing too, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. All those things line up to make sense for 4.0. Yep. Engineering, server meshing, yep. A redo of the comm system, the ability to be in multiple systems, the hype of that major update itself. It just makes sense that allows them to make it not only the like 3.0 was the planetary update, right? This could be the new systems and capital ships update.
Well, another bit of evidence that goes along with it is they said essentially the Idris will come slightly after 4.0. So that speaks to it as well. You know what I mean? Like you can't have the Idris. Well, look at what happened recently with what was it called? In Arena Commander, one of the swarm modes. They wanted the ship to be like a Javelin or a Bengal, but they couldn't do it, so they cut it back to 2 Idrises. They couldn't do it because it was too much to load. So they cut it back. And again, that'll probably come in when they do get server machines, because then they can dynamically scale. We're such a big part of this game. Like, and it's just object container streaming was such a revolution. Do you remember the performance gains when they dropped?
Dude, yes. I was getting like 5 to 7 frames per second on my computer before that. No exaggeration, folks. It's not an exaggeration, because it wasn't until I upgraded my PC in like 2020, 2019 that I was getting more than 10 frames per second. I kid you not. 3.0 to 3.3.
Yeah, I would say, sorry, put this to you, but I think it's probably the single biggest performance game we've ever got.
It is, yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Never, it's like they doubled, if not more.
Yep. So when you start to look at that as a network optimization thing, and some of the other things that are coming down the pipe, we've got Vulkan coming in this patch as well, but Vulkan's a weird one because it's kind of gone up in quality and then up in performance, but then down because you got more quality, so it's almost landed at the same point. Yeah,
it kind of gives them. I feel like it makes the room bigger rather than just raising its ceiling.
Yeah. So for me, the Polaris at the end of the day, and I can already hear Algrid in the back of my head type of talking, saying like the longer it takes for a ship to come out, the better it is anyway.
The better, yeah.
Because it's got less work they've got to do. That's why all the big ships are always going to come at the end, because then they don't have to go back and do as much work to bring them up to polish like they're doing with the Retaliator right now.
Why nobody uses the Gladiator.
Exactly. But again, smaller ships take less work to go back and do, so that's why you do them all first. You know what I mean? Because you eventually have to go back and bring them up to speed. Look how long it took them to do the Retaliator. Look how long it's going to take them to do the Starfarer.
Yeah.
And that's bigger.
Starfarer is going to be interesting. Yeah.
Look at the 890 jump, 600 eyes, same thing again.
You made a good point about OCS and how much it changed the game back then. We actually have gameplay before OCS and gameplay afterward because of the way the performance changed what we could do. And I wonder if we will see something that's similar with server meshing. Right now, we're in a pre-server meshing period where we're playing a Star Citizen that's like a certain way. It's fun and it's cool. But with the way that the game is changing to focus more on orgs and capital ships, and not to say that it is moving away from solo play, please don't take this that way. But for the longest time, this game has not been able to support the size to be an MMO. And now with server meshing, it might. And so we could see the development really shift in that direction. And I wonder what kind of stuff is coming with the Polaris and these other large ships that will change how we view it.
I can't remember who it was, but like, it would have been about 2 weeks ago now. There was a video I was watching, and it was a streamer, and they were going backwards and forwards, and they'd kind of found this invisible wall where it was jumping between two servers, and they could, because they had it was on the EPT. There was a test of static server meshing, and they'd found the midway point, and they could like shoot a rocket, and the rocket would go through and hit the person on the other side, but it would bend wildly for a second, and then it was just really interesting. And he could not see ships, and then all of a sudden they just pop up in front of him and stuff. They just have found this invisible wall thing in the middle of nowhere.
Do you know why it was bending and all that stuff?
Oh, it's obviously just network, yeah.
No, it's because he was firing into the moon's rotation field.
Gravity well.
Yeah.
Ah,
because
and they weren't lined up.
Yeah, because
right.
they move. They all rotate in space, but like nothing else does. So they just have a hard barrier where the rotation starts. I wonder if they'll.
Interesting.
Probably too much work to try and get rid of that. But yeah, that was.
Well, they eventually want to have the planets rotating too.
Right.
We haven't got to Crazy Town yet.
That would be crazy, dude. Imagine if you're sitting in space, sitting still, and you just see a planet go flying by.
10 minutes to get to here, but then when it's on the other side, it's 3 days, you know?
Right. Well, that is a very interesting aspect of planetary orbit, is like that going to have an effect on the economy of planets when you have two trade locations that normally are very distant and have great profitability. Suddenly they're super close, and so there's just nothing to do there. That's...
Or is there more traffic because it usually takes ages to get there?
Yeah.
So they try and load it all up why they can't. Yeah. You know, or are you the crazy lunatic that takes all the time to get across? It's just going to be the same thing with jump points that open and close.
Yeah.
You know?
So this Polaris feels like a potential org base.
Yes.
Like a center for people to basically go out and with their group and run missions, maybe be a central location for bounty hunting. Like you said, you have a hangar on board for a small ship to be able to take off, go find things, come back. Do ships like this feel like they're just going to dominate the game and make it so that solo players or small groups aren't comfortable going around in space?
No, there's a counter to every ship. You know what I mean? Like no ship will dominate the others because they'll always have a weakness, and the most minimal level of weakness is numbers. You know, and again, like I said, this ship is like the tip of the spear. But if you catch this ship out and you lock it down, it can't run. Right? Like again, if the Idris turns up and it locks this ship down, with even if it's just got like a mantis inside the Idris, as an example, and it turns on the QED, Polaris is done. Can't get out of there. You know?
I'm looking on its page, and it looks like it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 turrets, 4 of them manned. So probably those manned ones are going to be the most danger. You could to counter a ship like this, because its main ordnance is torpedoes. It's not an anti-fighter ship. Do you think you could probably get a few ships and target those turrets specifically and get this thing interdict, or not interdicted, but ensnare it and be able to kind of whittle it down?
It's much like a spear. It's got a weakness from the back as well. You know, so if you can get behind it, like we don't even know how this thing moves yet. Is it really fast in a straight line but turns like terrible? Does it turn really well but it doesn't fly really fast in a straight line? We don't know. You know, we can only make guesses at this point. Until we actually get in and see what it's going to fly like, that's going to dictate a lot of it.
Yeah, and engineering is going to be a big part of it. You know, even just this theory that taking out the turrets might mean you get the turrets taken out and this thing cannot attack you. You ensnare it and it can't jump away. So if you have backup, you can just hold it there long enough for you guys to come in, disable it, bring in a Liberator or a Legionnaire, board it. Like, I think the E-War aspect, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, E-War against capital ships combined with that engineering stuff could be incredibly effective in making sure that large groups can't just
hacking
chill in large
them
ships.
as well.
Yeah.
like going in and hacking their shields down or hacking the engines off and stuff like that. I think the other thing that we probably need to talk about specifically in the relations to the Polaris, and I can't believe I didn't think of this until just now, is the hanger itself. That essentially makes it a bit like a Swiss Army knife. Do you need extra search functionality? Take a Terrapin in there. Do you want extra torpedoes so you take an Eclipse? Do you want etc. etc. etc.? Do you want to expand the healing capabilities so you take like a you'd have to think about that for a second because you couldn't take that. You'd have to take a Pisces. So the medical one's not so good. But you get my point.
Well, they have
right?
you have a medical bay on there.
But what I'm saying is, do you want to expand that?
Fair.
Kind of like on a Carrack, you would take a C8R. Right?
Cutlass Red.
Do you Cutlass Red technically shouldn't be able to fit because it's a small so it's a size 2. Wait, yeah, size 2, and that is a size 3. So technically the Cutlass shouldn't be able, it might be able to physically fit, but size wise it shouldn't actually be able to connect with the thing. I could be wrong, but I'll double check that later, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Because the Cutlass is a medium and it's only designed for smalls.
Yeah, this thing actually, if it's got an armory and a brig, yeah, you're missing out on that larger hangar, like you're saying. But because it's got all that stuff on the ship already, even if it can't expand into stuff like the Cutlass Red would need, or even say the Zeus MR, you could still do your bounty hunting.
But isn't that what the docks are for on the side? So the medium ones can dock with it.
Right. Yeah.
They can't be repaired. But again, if you're going out in a bounty hunting squad, you go with numbers, so you'd have more small ships, and so they can be repaired. You're really something like the Cutlass Blue, right? You'd be returning the bad guys in their pods to the Cutlass Blue. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the fight where the Avenger, the Saber Raven, whatever other E-Warfare ships come up down the line. They're the ones that you go in because you know that they can be repaired. You're not going to put a Cutlass Blue in harm's way because chances are it's going to cost you. It's going to be more valuable to keep. If you get my point.
I like the idea of these being a sort of extended center, kind of like you're taking your space station with you, so you can have your Cutlass Blue or your Zeus MR, or whatever it is that's doing the bounty hunting. You take that in your Polaris, or connected to it, go out into a super distant system, right, where nobody really thinks about going back to a space station from there. And you just have these people going out running missions on planets, return to your Polaris, put the people off into the brig, go out and run more missions, and you just kind of maintain this home base in the star system. That hangar makes this ship, and I guess capital ships in general, feel like a mobile space station almost for a group.
Yeah. We're going to see it more and more, though, aren't we? Where you go out for long periods of time in these bigger ships. And, again, as I said, pushing to work together. The benefit of going out for a longer period of time is you can go further, find more. And that's just in exploration. That's not even getting into, combat and all the other stuff. I do have a question for you, though, and I think your answer will be very different from mine, is what is the biggest worry you have with this ship? The thing that kind of scares you most type of thing?
You mean at launch or long term?
Yeah, at launch. Well, not at launch, or at release of the Polaris. Let's just call it that, at the release of the Polaris, whenever that is.
I think in general, just how many ship systems might not be ready to support it. That goes engineering, E-War aspects, comms controls, permissions on ships. And then one of the biggest ones would be, dang it.
So essentially not enough to do on the ship? Is that what I'm hearing?
Not that the ship can utilize the things it needs to.
Right. So that doesn't worry me so much because they'll come eventually.
But we're at a time right now where they're diverting, like they're triaging and diverting things specifically for, they don't have enough people to do what they want to do. And if they put this much time into the Polaris and this much hype behind it, if it comes into the game, it should be usable. It should have a real obvious use for it. They shouldn't be introducing the solution and then coming up with the problem 6 to 12 months later. We should be seeing that stuff happen in the same patch. And I'm not saying it needs to be a perfect situation, but we can't be running 890 jump boarding event size 2 We need a reason to use this.
You're probably going to hate me for this then. So
wait.
biggest worry...
Scanning is also a big thing that needs to be updated before this. Emissions, scanning. Being able to see what you're looking at.
Scanning, I've said quite a few times now, is the single biggest thing that needs to happen. And now we've got the star map in. I'm pretty sure it's coming very rapidly behind it. I actually think they've put that as a priority in front of several other things, including the cargo refactor, because it really does need to become before that. To get that core basic gameplay loop, if you actually kind of break down what this game is you've essentially got pirates, good pirates, I guess you could call it, or combat people on both sides of the coin, and then you've got something of value, whether it's cargo, salvage, etc., etc., etc. But to get that to all work, the pirates have to be able to find the thing of value so they can attack it, and then that forces them to have escorts, which we know they've talked about for years, but nobody uses escorts right now. So go to where they need. That's the last thing that we need.
That's
scanning.
Good.
It's huge.
Yeah, scanning makes a big difference. And
there's this guy called Space Tomato. He did this really cool video on it that has all these cool whiz-bang graphics of people sending out the probes and stuff. You should watch it. It'll be linked up here. If I can put it right, actually in the cards right here by Honey. Yeah, she'll do it right now. It's a great video. No, it seriously is a great video. I have recommended it several times.
No, it is.
Because it clearly explains it very well.
From what I know, that is the only in-depth video that has been published that covers what they want to do for long-distance scanning. Because they've only talked about it once. That was the, I want to say EUPU team, August 2020, something like that. And they've just never again since then. So maybe things have changed about that. But yeah, check that out if you want to learn more about it.
If you got abducted by aliens, don't watch it though. It talks a lot about probes, so you might get a bit scared.
That's the most exciting part of the game for me. So I will cover that nonstop once it starts coming up. Not the alien probing, Jesus.
Yep, cool. Yeah, someone clip that because that's gold.
Who doesn't want to get probed by aliens?
Yeah. Probed by Space Tomato. Damn. Right.
It's
So the thing I'm worried about the most is going to sound so vain when I say this, is the skins that come with this thing. They're going to be expensive as shit. Like when that drops, they're going to drop a myriad of skins for this Polaris. I reckon they'll be like $50 plus. I shit you not. Because remember what they did with the Carrack? They dropped one skin and it was like $30 or whatever.
Look, they've made some pointed decisions in the last year when it comes to sales, ships, and marketing decisions. We always kind of get on their case about this over the last several years, but this last year is definitely, like we were talking about this on Inforunners, it's more noticeable. I do not want to see the Polaris come in and just be a ship that they want to get people to buy. I really don't. It's an amazing ship. It can do a lot. This game is moving towards capital ship gameplay. I just really don't want to see this trajectory towards capital ship gameplay going, and then the Polaris drops, and they're like, oh, wait a couple patches. Don't do that this time, please.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you, but I think it would be very naive of us to see marketing change their tune. They are going to hype the utter crap out of this to try and sell them.
Oh, they can hype it.
I think that
just meet it.
Actually, that's another part of the hype we haven't even talked about yet. If it's $750, that like we had a look at this really briefly on stream the other day. And it was somewhere between, if I remember the numbers, it was $112 to $250 is the price increase based on the I think it was the 15 to 30% or something like that, because that's how much they usually go up, is 15 to 20%. Oh, sorry, 30%. Oh god, I can't remember the math, but yeah, it's going to be roughly $100 at least.
That's a lot, man.
It's the same price as a Pioneer. And the Pioneer is a much bigger capital ship. But again, the Pioneer will go up as well, won't it? So, yeah.
I don't get it for capital, for combat ships.
Well, you said it yourself. What did you say before? 8 to 14?
6 to 14.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
6 to 14. So let's just take 14. So the math seems more interesting. But again, if you were going to sell ships to people, you can't get 14 people to buy one ship because it just doesn't work logistically, right? But you can get one person to buy it, right? back when I interviewed Chris, and he's also said it since the 10th of the Chairman stuff, was he intended for when the game to come out for these ships to go up in value, right? So he said the example he gave me at the time was an Aurora will stay the same, a Constellation will be about 5 times the price. I would argue it's about 4 times the price because there's 4 people on it. And then the Idris would go up by about 10 times. Again, it's because it's based on orgs and stuff like that. So it's got to go up to match the number of people that are trying to grind for it, essentially.
I agree with that, but these are real dollars. And I guess part of that is making sure that there aren't enough of them out in the verse, but we're going to talk about this in a bit. Yep. There are thousands of these things already purchased throughout the years.
What's more value, dollars or time?
Well,
you see what I mean?
I mean, you can't spend time to get the Polaris right now.
But they basically said that Connie would take 60 hours to earn, and at the time it cost $225. Now I can earn more than that in 60 hours working a job.
Oh, I think that they should be able to dictate the time it takes for sure. Like they can come up with arbitrary values for all of that. The Polaris should be way the heck up there.
Well, I can only imagine what it's going to take for an org to earn, say, a Kraken or an Idris or a Javelin. Like, is that like a 12-month earning job for 20 people? Or is it 3 months? Like, we don't know that yet, do we?
This is another part of what I was talking about earlier, how this game is going to completely change in how we think of it after server meshing, possibly, because maybe suddenly it becomes more with less wipes, with more gameplay and more better economy. Maybe it starts to make more sense for a lot of people to buy these games in the game rather than outside the game. And then suddenly you're thinking about, okay, well, I need to form a group of friends so we can pool our money to buy this rather than me spending some dollars to buy it. That could change the way people view these ships too. Maybe people complain less about the fact that ships are so expensive because they understand they're supposed to team up to get them.
So what I'm actually thinking, it would be kind of be good for you and me at this point, because it's been a long time since we've actually kind of talked about this subject, was a while ago on Inforunners, God, it'd be a really old video now, me and Sia did a video called Buyer's Remorse, and it really went into this subject about, and Buyer's Remorse has kind of really helped with a lot of, that whole earn down economy we talk about at Inforunners, and the whole don't buy fighters because they won't, because they won't go up in value based on what Chris told us about the multiplication stuff, and how we always kind of recommend if you're going to, instead of buying like 5 fighters, just get 1 big ship if you've spent that amount of money. Where most people, we just recommend get 1 ship and that's it, and just get a star pack. That's all you need, and find friends that have the bigger ships, right? But I'm thinking that'd be a good kind of thought experiment for me and you to go back and do that, and do Buyer's Remorse 2.0. I think it might be time for that one, because we are getting close to that point where we're seeing all the ship prices go up, and we knew that was going to happen, right? So that's why we talked about it and called it Buyer's Remorse, because there are going to be these people that came out, and we saw it a little bit earlier on, and it's changing a little bit now, where you get something like a Reclaimer, and in game it was more valuable than a Hammerhead. But a Hammerhead was almost twice the price. Why is that?
I think there's going to be a lot of Buyer's Remorse with this game.
Yeah, why is a Drake ship going to be penalized because it's Drake and made with cheaper components, so it's not as valuable as, say, an Origin ship? Things like that. And how are they going to address that and balance that and make it fair? Because the worst thing is going to be, I spent $750 on this ship and I got X, and someone else spent $750 on their ship and theirs is twice the value of mine. Like, if that ever happens, you are going to get some super sour people.
But that's why it is a problem for people to constantly enter this game and view everything in dollar value. Like, do not spend money on a ship if you think you're going to get the dollar amount of that ship out of the ship. Spend it for the fun or the activity that you want to do, because they started this all as pledges. They started it as being able to pay money for a ship, not necessarily to get a certain amount of star citizens. You're not getting 90% star citizens for spending an 890 jump as opposed to a Cutlass Black.
Yeah, there's also that stigma too, because I didn't see it myself, but I had multiple people tell me about this. So Summit 1G's been playing the game this week, right? And apparently one of the people that were helping him out was saying you need to buy thousands of dollars of spaceships, and telling people, again, it's a stigma. That is not true. You and I know that not to be true. But this person was saying that you really need to buy them all so you can play the game. I think he was talking more about the now. But again, some of that audience needs to be informed.
But then just buy them in the game.
Exactly. But even CIG doesn't help themselves in that regard because they basically bring out a ship and it takes 6 months to be able to be earnable in game.
But literally right now is the best time to tell somebody that, because there was no new ships brought out the beginning of this year, right? So they just added everything that came out at the end of last year, which means I think almost every single ship that you can fly in the game is now available in game stores, right?
Yep.
Because they haven't released anything else in the last 6 months.
Yep, it'll just be the Pulse and whatever else they release at Invictus.
That's got to be the first time this has been true, because they usually are releasing stuff like every quarter. And so now is the best time to tell someone, and maybe you need a little kickstart getting started in the game, but people also don't pay enough attention to the fact that you can rent ships. Like you can take the starting UEC, double it, and you can rent a Prospector.
See, there's little problems there too, because you can't change the stock loadouts and blah, blah, blah. That needs to be
fixed. I thought they fixed that.
They
fixed that.
I have not kept apprised of that, but yeah, you could be correct. And I
got a rental Prospector last year, and I was able to do some tweaking to it. But there needs to be more with the rental system. But that's another thing that people need to remember to tell folks.
I don't rent ships. Can you not tell?
I don't either, dude. I don't even buy ships in game.
Once you know our grid, you don't need to rent ships. It's just got everything.
But really, I think that is, and we're getting off topic with this discussion. It's
an Inforunners thing, though, man. That's all we do is get off topic.
It all goes back to the idea that like the Polaris is going to be a tough ship to beat, but it will have its weaknesses, and it's not going to be OP for what it is. Like you talked about how Chris wants you to be able to go and pick up one capital ship instead of picking up multiple dogfighters. But maybe your case does call for multiple dogfighters. Maybe there is a combination of ships that's better than the Polaris, so the person who picked up the Polaris doesn't beat them. It's going to be balanced into the game. It's not going to just come in and be a top dogfighter or something.
Yeah, I don't think the Polaris will be moving on its own either. I think it'll be cycling through fighters, repairing them and refueling them, like essentially giving them that long range ability. You could essentially be warping with 5 or 6 fighters, and they could all be landing and refueling to extend their range, as an example. Again, if you go right, they've only got F7As, they can only go this far, and all of a sudden a Polaris comes out of nowhere, or they never knew the Polaris existed, and you've just like quadrupled your range.
Yep.
You just see the effect it can have, right?
That's org gameplay. You keep that Polaris hidden, your enemies don't see it, you whip it out, and you've spent the money, time, investment, you've gotten that ship out there. It's all part of the strategy. So I hope that's what I hope that the game is ready for next year when they start bringing this stuff in. Because, folks, 4.0, it's not happening in Invictus.
And you're going to get more strategy the more people you're playing with. When you brainstorm ideas, that's one of the things we do in France. We always brainstorm shit, and that's how we kind of come to these determining things, because someone will put something in and someone else will put something in, and you have all these ideas pop out. When you do it on your own, less strategy. It's just that simple. You're going to have way more fun doing it with other people in my book, but I don't know. Some people like to be on their own, don't they? So yeah.
Speaking of other people, we talked about a 6 to 14 person crew here, but with engineering, I think that number is going to go up.
No, I don't think so. I think people are going to have multiple hats. Mr. Loudguns did a video that I very adamantly disagreed with earlier on in the year, where he was counting every single role on the ship and got to a certain number, but he had no double ups. Why can't the medic be a turret gunner?
I think though that kind of stuff does matter, but if you look at the roles here, you've got your pilot, 4 turret gunners, so that's 5 people. You probably got somebody who's controlling torpedoes, that's 6. I would assume somebody else is controlling your systems, but I guess that could be your manager engineer, so that'd be 7. And then this is what, a 3-deck ship, 155 meters in length, and the A2 at 2 decks, and I think 70 something meters in length is taking 3 engineers. So you could probably say 6 engineers on top of that. So that was already putting you at 13. And we're not even talking about, logistics folks. We're not talking about all that other stuff. And I think the people I named would all be active during combat.
again, you got to get to 14. You didn't get above 14, but also you've got multiple hats. As I said, you've got that number you gave is was it 6 to 14?
Yeah.
6 is the bare minimum to get the ship functional.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that's like nobody's on the turrets, right? And again, why can't the engineer be a turret gunner, the medic be a turret gunner?
I think that's sketchy. I think putting an engineer as a turret gunner on a combat ship is sketchy because you always need those two things at the same time.
Player choice. It'll come. I'm not saying it's a good idea. Yeah. I'm saying a player choice.
Good luck.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And when I say engineer, I should have clarified there. The guy that's running the hangar is what I meant. I shouldn't have said engineer. I meant the repair guy. Sorry, not the guy in the engine room. Yeah.
Do you think?
But again, like the security guard in the brig, is he going to always be there on guard, or is he going to be jumping on turret gun when the shit hits the fan?
Do you think because they're leaving all of this idea of how groups will play the game together, it's a little bit ambiguous? Like engineer, for instance, they're introducing with a bunch of different tasks, but they're not telling us you have to do something specific to be an engineer. Same will probably go for things like repair and exploration, turret gunning, whatever you want to call. Do you think that's going to make it harder for people to understand how to play this game in groups, or better?
It's really it's an interesting question, because really, essentially the question you're asking, is it better to have multiple gameplay for one person or niche gameplay for many?
Well, more so, is it better to get named a role than to be able to just do things that might fall under that role?
Well, when you come in as a single person, can't you essentially teach the other person in a turret? So therefore you can kind of guide them. So if you're the engineer, you can have them stand beside you and learn engineering, learn medical. Here I'm driving the ship. You do this and pay attention to how I fly it. Where if it's just you and your ship alone, you are essentially blind. And I know when I've been teaching other people, I always tend to take a ship where it's a multi-crew, even if it's just like a hurricane and I'm sitting in the turret while they're flying. So I think multi-crew is stronger in the teaching perspective, or the accessing the game perspective. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you can just come in and learn a part of a little bit at a time.
But so let's say, like, you're playing Battlefield and you get to spawn as the team's medic. So you spawn in and you have a medical bag, a healing tool, and a specific type of gun that dictates kind of how you're engaging in combat. In Star Citizen, you just kind of tell the group you want to be a medic. You could go in there with this medical kind of quick item thing, briefcase they've been showing us a little bit. You can go in there with the medical tool and some like extra stuff to hand out. You could decide that you only want to have a medical tool and you have a shotgun with you. Like, it's not written in stone, Another example is the engineering thing. They're like, oh yeah, you got 3 different hats of engineering and you can be the person running around and fixing the fuses, or the person on the console. But if somebody walked into a ship and the ship owner was like, okay, you're the engineer, that person doesn't necessarily have a list of things that means they have to do.
I think that would only happen in an org. And I think the other part it would be is what happens when the head engineer dies. Someone's got to pick up the mantle, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think there'll be a general, like, basic knowledge that almost everybody has. And also, when you if you put it onto a random ship, you would have, responded to a job listing looking for a 4-star medic, and you would apply as a 4-star medic, saying I'm a 4-star medic looking for work, and someone goes, hey, I need a 4-star medic, so they'll A and B gets connected together and matched together, and off they go. But yeah, the only one I can think of is an org, and it's like, okay, today we're going out mining. We don't need a medic, so I'm going to need you. And I'm picking an example here, right? Could be anything, where you don't do your normal role because it's just not needed on that day, and so you want to play with your friends and you make a compromise and go, and and then and you might just be in the back seat on that ship, but then the next day you go out and do some kind of medical thing. All of a sudden, hey, do you want to be the captain and run this whole thing because you really know medical? It's time and place.
I do. Yeah, I hope that makes the game easier for folks. I can see that kind of choice making it harder for people to make the decision for themselves and kind of feel like maybe if they stepped into a role, they would be unprepared because they didn't know if there was like a certain level they have to meet. But I look forward to seeing how that develops group gameplay.
Yeah. Player choice seems to be a thing that just comes up again and again in a lot of discussions we're having lately. It seems to be such a focus to you can be who you want to be. And I guess the only deterrent to that is if you want to play with your mates, well, then you're going to make it, well, it's just like in the real world. If I want to play Helldivers and my other friends don't want to play Helldivers, then I have to go play on my own, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
All right, to close off this talk about the Polaris, let's talk on what's going to happen at Invictus Week with this ship. Do you think people will be able to get inside of it, or are they just watching it fly past?
They've literally told us, haven't they? It's just going to be a part of the fleet flying around. So
No. You're missing what I'm saying. Do you think players will be able to get inside of the Polaris?
Oh, right. Yeah. Click. Wink, wink. Yes, I say what you're saying now. Yeah, I was about to say players are definitely going to try and get in this thing, but I from the video, I'd actually go back and have to double check it again. But I'm pretty sure the window is like solid glass, so it's non-transparent. I think we're only seeing the outside shell. Long story short,
my friend, we know how to move through solid glass. You can tell.
Oh, yeah, we'll get in it, but there won't be anything in there.
Yeah, you think it won't have an interior or anything?
Yeah, it kind of like Paul's head when he's had too much to drink. You know, lights are on, but nobody's home. It's just totally empty.
Oh, there's somebody's home, and their name starts with Redeemer.
Yes, very much so.
Rent free.
Yeah, rent free.
Somebody needs to buy that man a Redeemer. Yeah, I don't.
CIG did. CIG gave him one for free, made it unmeltable and unrenamable, and it's called Paul's favorite ship.
Nice.
He can't rename.
So, was that his paycheck for the month, or?
I don't know, but I've been making the joke ever since that the Javelin is my least favorite ship. I hate that thing. It is freaking disgusting.
Oh my gosh, Squadron 42 is my least favorite game. CIG, I hate it.
Yeah,
if it ever showed up in my games library, I would perish.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wink. But I think do you think that they'll land it at all? Remember that one time way back when they had the Kraken landed out at Orville during Invictus Week?
I would hope that we can walk up around it and look inside it, like RSI Day or whatever, and they have it in a hangar or something. That would be really cool. We are technically at Art Corp, and they have done something like that with the Idris before, I believe it was. So I can't see why they couldn't do it again.
Yeah, that was amazing too. It's cool to get the sense of scale.
Yeah, that is something that is often lost when you're constantly looking at JPEGs that look the same size.
Yeah,
crack open that. It happens with me and Algrid a lot. Like one of us will say something, and then we go put it in a hangar view, and we're like, "Oh shit, you were right." And I can think of a couple of instances where it's happened both ways, where I've forgotten or he's forgotten. But yeah, you got to sit there and look at them side by side every once in a while just to take them in. And I guarantee if they have it in a hall like that, like you're suggesting, or a hangar, it'll sell more. It will.
Yeah, I mean, it is RSI Day. They're going to have the exterior ready. It would make a ton of sense for them to let us see the exterior not like moving around really fast, but maybe they'll just have it floating in space around the space station so you could still kind of EVA around it or move slowly. It doesn't have to always be flying around. As long as people can just get a good close-up look of it, I think would be better than just watching it fly around from a distance.
It's definitely harder to do that now than before, though, because like you got to fly from pads and it takes a while and stuff like that, and a lot of people don't know you can even do that, so they tend to just fly it up and look it out over their ship. But I think that's what most people do. They'll just see it stopping at, you know, what is it, Everest or Port Tressler,
docking up at those stations.
Yeah. But I would hope that it kind of lands on the ground somewhere and you can walk around it. That's my hope. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously. Maybe they don't want people getting up and close to look at the exterior because they don't feel it's ready yet. So yeah, wait and see.
Maybe. And you think it'll get a price increase at Invictus? Or do you think it'll wait until it's launched?
No, I think it's launched.
Okay.
Yep.
They'll be like, this is the last time.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's probably what we'll hear. But if it does get a price increase, I think it would get less of one at the next time. So, like, say they did $50 here and $50 at Thingo. But yeah, I don't see it getting one if you can't like be flight ready essentially.
Okay, fair. All right, and I know I said that was going to finish us off, but last question. This is a wild card. When do you think it's going to drop with 4.0? Like we said, it was going to come with 4.0, but when do you think that is going to be?
When?
Yeah. Lovely when questions.
Okay. Not the way this usually goes down. It's going to be like the holiday, like December. Like seriously, every year isn't that how it goes now?
Oh, but dude, imagine they drop server meshing and then go away for the holiday.
Yeah, I know, absolutely nightmare. I would hope CitizenCon, but I think we kind of need to see where server meshing is sitting at the midpoint of the year when they said that's where it was going to be. So I think we can all agree it's locked to server meshing. It really is, and I don't know. You tell me. Is it something you really want them to rush? I don't. I kind of want that working really, really well.
Yeah, I want it working well.
Yeah,
I definitely like if we could get server meshing in this year, and that meant I don't know. Let's say the Stanton system can now support 300 to 400 people. Missions are running well, and the game is smooth. That'd be great. But like if server meshing is going to come in and the game is still struggling and like there are things that just aren't ready, I would prefer to wait till next year. Yeah, and it's that really, really annoys me. I don't want to have to wait until next year. I feel like I've said that the last 2 years.
How long did you and I say that about the star map, though? I think we talked about that for like 5 years.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm really waiting for the star map. I hate that now that it's finally here and people are like, "There's nothing in 323," and I'm like, "Bro, the star map." I know it's quality of life. I'm not saying it's a game changer or anything, but we waited so long, and then it's a bummer to see it so disregarded. But I do think that 4.0 could still come out this fall. They've been doing stuff. Like they went quiet on server meshing after they did their tests. They've got their heads down. Maybe they're making good improvements.
Yeah, before the show we were talking about triggers.
Yeah.
That is a massive trigger for me because I live in the Southern Hemisphere.
Okay. Well, it's still technically fall, right?
You would be talking quarter 3 is what I would
spring
call
for
it.
You.
Yeah, but I just go into quarters because then it's globalist when you say quarters. So
I can't.
Because if I say winter, you.
Well, yeah.
What a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's pretty simple.
CIG's quarters change size every year. I can't keep up with it. Quarter 3 could be in August or it could be in October.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Normal. No, their dates move, but yeah, just normal quarters is every 3 months.
Yeah.
From start to finish. But
really?
Yeah.
I thought there were 6 quarters.
No, there's 3.
There's 4.
Maybe it was CIG. Yeah. Oh no, there's only 4. Yep. Anyway, it confusing me now.
All right, the podcast has gone on long enough. Clearly,
yeah.
Execute. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Yep.
A nice back-to-back. Glad to be able to get on Inforunners as well today. And before you go, let the folks know where they can find Inforunners and what kind of content goes up on there.
Never good at this stuff. This is why I usually get pulled into this. So we basically over Invictus we will focus a lot on ships and saving people money. That's one of the big things we do. We do a lot of speculation. We do a lot of talking, podcast type thing like we've done just here, and we try and do it in a group of guys and try and I don't know, just get you thinking. That's one of the big things we try and do is try and get people to think and change their perspective. But all about Star Citizen, nothing else, just Star Citizen nonstop. So
definitely understanding the place that ships sit in the game, what they compare to, why you might want to look at them, and when they might be coming out. That's very much cream of Inforunners content. And it's a group of people. Like Inforunners, a lot of people don't know, is made up of a group of content creators. I am one of them. People often don't know I'm on the team, but Good place to go for Invictus Week for sure, and ship weeks in general. So we'll have that link down below in the show notes.
And just Inforunners on Twitch and YouTube, but YouTube, as we said earlier in the show, is our main bread and butter. So
yeah. Well, thanks for joining me again, dude, and thank you to all of you watching and listening out there with your bright little eyes and ears. Appreciate you. This one came out a little bit late, and like I said, we will have the other episode up as a bonus on the audio platform. So for anybody who's watching, you can find that down below, and go check that out. It's a good talk about Star Citizen becoming an MMO.
I want to hear in the comments who's sexier, me or Zero State. Just let me know. I just want to know.
It's
maybe he's the Wish version of Execute. Maybe it's the other way around. I had it all wrong the whole time.
It's an important metric for Star Citizen content creation is sexiness, both in game and out. That's why I need those male butts to get better in the game. CIG, me those butts. Anyways, this isn't a show about butts. It's about Polaris, and I hope you learned something about them, had some entertainment, learned something new, and we'll see you next week.